The letter arrived on a cold December night, resting on the desk of a Lahore newspaper editor. At first glance, it seemed like the ramblings of a madman, but as the words sank in, a chill ran down his spine.
I have unalived 100 boys, their bodies gone, dissolved in acid. There is no evidence left. Only their clothes remain.
A confession like this wasn't common. It was too detailed, too deliberate. And yet, as police scrambled to verify its contents, a horrifying truth emerged. This wasn't just a claim. It was a full-blown nightmare. Javed Iqbal Mughal was not always a monster, at least not on the surface. Born in 1961 into a wealthy family, he had all the privileges many in Lahore could only dream of. Javed Iqbal's relationship with his family was complex. Born into a wealthy and respected business family in Lahore in 1961, he was the sixth of 8 children. His father, Muhammad Iqbal, was a well-off trader, ensuring that Javed had a privileged upbringing. However, despite his family's affluence, Iqbal was described as a troubled child. He had a rebellious nature and often isolated himself. While his father supported him financially, buying him properties and businesses, his emotional connection with his family seemed strained. His father, being a strict businessman, expected discipline and success. While he provided for Iqbal financially, there is little evidence of a close emotional bond. Some reports suggest that Iqbal often felt overshadowed by his more successful siblings. Yet beneath the facade of an ordinary man lurked a twisted desire, one that would claim the lives of 100 innocent boys. Iqbal often roamed the streets of Lahore, particularly near bus stations, railway stations, and markets, places where vulnerable children gathered. He would approach them with a warm demeanor, offering food, shelter, and sometimes even money. Since many of these children were starving and had nowhere to go, they saw him as a savior. Iqbal ran a rented house in Lahore, which he turned into his personal chamber. He presented it as a safe space for homeless children, even claiming to run a charity for street kids. Some boys were invited to stay permanently, while others visited frequently, unaware of the fate that awaited them. Once inside his home, Iqbal would manipulate his victims, ensuring they did not leave. He often acted like a father figure, earning their trust before revealing his dark intentions. Some reports suggest that he would drug the boys to make them easier to control before carrying out his horrific crimes. Perhaps the most disturbing element of his crimes was that he kept souvenirs. Police later found neatly folded clothes and shoes of his victims in his home, arranged as if he wanted to remember them. This eerie collection ultimately played a role in confirming his crimes. Iqbal's ability to manipulate and prey on the most vulnerable made him one of the most terrifying serial killers in Pakistan's history. His tactics highlight the dark reality that predators often mask themselves as helpers, exploiting those who have no one to protect them. But what awaited them behind those closed doors was something out of a horror story. Between 1998 and 1999, he carried out one of Pakistan's most gruesome crime sprees, strangling his victims before methodically dismembering them. Their bodies were disposed of in vats of hydrochloric acid erased from existence. What drove him to commit such unspeakable acts? Iqbal's own words offered a chilling glimpse into his mind. Years earlier, he had been arrested for sodomy, a charge that brought disgrace to his family. His mother, unable to bear the shame, passed away. The most significant relationship in Iqbal's life was with his mother. He was extremely attached to her, and her death played a crucial role in his descent into crime. After being arrested for sodomy in the 1990s, Iqbal believed that the disgrace led to his mother's declining health and eventual death. In his twisted logic, Iqbal blamed society for her death, and so he made a vow: if he had suffered, so would others. Iqbal's crimes shocked his family. After his arrest, they publicly disowned him, refusing to claim his body after his death in prison. His siblings wanted nothing to do with him, erasing any remaining ties he had with his family. Inside Javed Iqbal's house, death wasn't sudden. It was slow, calculated, and filled with terror. For some victims, their final moments were spent struggling for breath, while others were forced to watch the nightmare unfold before meeting the same fate. One night, a 12-year-old boy named Imran, name changed for anonymity, was lured into Iqbal's house under the promise of food and shelter. Hungry and exhausted, he followed Iqbal, believing he had found safety. Once inside, the atmosphere changed. The friendly demeanor disappeared, and Iqbal locked the doors behind him. As Imran sat down, he noticed something odd. a collection of boys' clothes neatly folded in one corner. Before he could react, Iqbal grabbed him from behind, pressing a rope against his throat. Imran struggled, kicking and scratching, but Iqbal was stronger. The boy's nails clawed at the floor, leaving deep scratch marks as he gasped for air. After minutes of desperate struggle, his body finally went limp, but Iqbal wasn't done yet. He dragged the lifeless body to the bathroom where a vat of hydrochloric acid waited. With practiced ease, he dropped the boy in, watching as the acid dissolved flesh and bone, erasing all evidence. By morning, Imran no longer existed. Iqbal's sadistic nature wasn't limited to unaliving children. He sometimes made his victims witness the fate that awaited them. One chilling account describes how he brought in two boys at the same time. One was around 10, the other slightly older. After trapping them inside, Iqbal bound their hands and forced the older boy to watch as he strangled the younger one with a chain. The boy screamed, begged, and cried, but Iqbal showed no mercy. The last thing the younger child saw was his friend's terrified face. Then, turning to the surviving boy, Iqbal coldly said,
"This will happen to you next."
Hours later, he carried out his threat. These scenes, later described in Iqbal's own confession, paint a terrifying picture of his crimes. He didn't just kill, he tortured, instilled fear, and ensured that his victims knew they were utterly powerless. Even among serial killers, Javed Iqbal's level of cruelty places him in a category of his own, a man who turned murder into a calculated ritual, carried out with chilling precision. Iqbal's urge to be acknowledged for his perfect crimes became his undoing. In December 1999, he sent a detailed letter to the police and a Lahore newspaper. The letter was not just a confession, but also a taunting message, describing the crimes he had committed and how he had disposed of the bodies in vats of acid. He gave precise details about the number of boys he had unalived and the methods he used, leaving no doubt about his guilt. The letter also served another purpose. Iqbal wanted the world to know that he had outsmarted law enforcement and authorities. He even included an explicit note saying that he would not be caught. This chilling arrogance is what ultimately triggered the massive manhunt that led to his arrest. As the police pieced together Iqbal's letter, a massive investigation was launched, the largest manhunt in Pakistan's history. What they found was horrifying. In Iqbal's house, they discovered neatly folded clothes and shoes belonging to the victims. Nearby, a diary documented each crime in gruesome detail, but Iqbal was nowhere to be found. For weeks, he evaded capture, slipping through the fingers of law enforcement. Then, just as suddenly as he had disappeared, he walked into a newspaper office and surrendered.
"I could have kept going," he told officers, "but I wanted you to know exactly what I did."
Javed Iqbal's trial was as chilling as his crimes. After his arrest in December of 1999, he was charged with the murder and sexual abuse of at least 100 boys. During the trial, the prosecution presented overwhelming evidence against Iqbal, including his detailed confession and the chilling diary he had kept, listing each victim's name, age, and the date of their death. However, his defense team attempted to argue that his confession was coerced under pressure from the police. Iqbal's demeanor in court was cold and detached. He showed no remorse for his actions and seemed more focused on defending his methods rather than expressing regret for the victims he had unalived. In the end, the court sentenced Javed Iqbal to death by strangulation, followed by dismantle him and dissolution in acid, mirroring the fate of his victims. The sentence sparked controversy, however, as Pakistan is a signatory to international human rights agreements that prohibit such extreme forms of punishment. There was significant debate on whether the death sentence was too cruel or a just consequence for the horrors he inflicted. Iqbal's trial did not bring peace to the families of his victims, but it did ensure that his crimes were widely known. While many hoped for justice, the trial's conclusion raised more questions about the effectiveness of the judicial system in dealing with such extreme cases. In October 2001, before his death, Iqbal had not yet been executed, and the case remained a dark chapter in Pakistan's legal history. Though the trial was ultimately a formality due to his confession, it exposed not just Iqbal's brutality, but also the deep vulnerabilities in the country's child protection systems. The official report from prison authorities stated that Iqbal died by suicide. According to this version, he had hung himself using a piece of cloth from his cell's bars. His death was described as a self-inflicted act. His accomplice, who was in the same cell, was also found dead, allegedly from the same cause. No clear evidence was found that would confirm his death as a suicide. Some speculated that he may have been murdered by someone who had access to him in prison, possibly to prevent further public revelations or because of the fear of retribution from the families of his victims. A more widely discussed theory is that Iqbal was killed by prison authorities or other powerful figures who feared the potential consequences of his trial and future revelations. Given his notoriety and the pain he had caused, many believed that allowing him to live would only lead to further turmoil and embarrassment for the judicial system. Iqbal's death, whether a suicide or murder, ended the possibility of a full trial and further insight into his motives, methods, and any accomplices. The unresolved nature of his death left the public with lingering questions, and it further deepened the dark mystery surrounding his entire case. His death remains one of the most contentious and unresolved aspects of his terrifying story. While some view it as poetic justice, he met a violent end like his victims. Others see it as a missed opportunity to uncover more about his horrific crimes. And that's the chilling story of Javed Iqbal, one of the most notorious serial killers in Pakistan's history. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think happened to Iqbal, and what lessons can we learn from his case? Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.